done this a couple of times in the past couple of years, and usually it works out really well. It doesn't have to be longer than the front side of a page, or maybe front and back, but the first thing you're going to want to do is, kind of get their background knowledge going. Give them a couple of questions maybe to think about, ask them, relate it to their lives in some way, and then jump right into vocabulary. And what I want you to understand about vocabulary is that it doesn't have to be a really long, drawn-out process. You don't need to spend 25 minutes on vocabulary. You don't need to write all the words up on the board. You don't have to give them flashcards. Sometimes really effective vocabulary instruction can occur in maybe 5 minutes. And what I usually do is I say, okay, you've got a text in front of you. I want you to scan it. Don't read it. Just use your eyes to take in a lot of text at one time, and tell me any words that a typical 8th grader would not understand. And I found that asking it in that way kind of helps them to think about it. They all think that they know a lot, and so they won't say, oh, I don't know this word. But they might say, oh, well, a typical 8th grader wouldn't know what a phenomenon is. And so then we talk about it. I might say, well, a phenomenon is something strange, something that happens that doesn't usually happen. Can anybody give me an example of something that doesn't usually happen in real life?
Snow in the summer.
Sure, snow in the summer. That would be a phenomenon. And then I have them write it down. I tell them this is your text. You can write on it. You can draw arrows. And so whatever way makes sense to them, they might underline it, draw an arrow, something that doesn't usually happen, and then move on to the next one. You might do that 3, 4 times, and then it's over. They're ready to go because they haven't, they know what the words mean. They don't need to spend a whole class period going over all those things. And then the next thing I do usually is go through a little bit of the text with them together as a whole class, and we'll take notes in the margins, and I've modeled that for them, so most of the 8th graders know how to do that, but it takes some practice to get to know how to do it really well.
So I'm just going to model for you that, and I'm going to start by, this is obviously the same article that you have. I want to start by just telling you that I brought a couple of examples of students doing this in our class. We use a resource called Scope Magazine by Scholastic. So this week, to do a close reading, I took 2 of the articles, 2 related paired text, out of the scope, and I just copied them. They were 1 page each, so it was pretty easy for me to do that. And I had the students actually use that. I only have a classroom set of 30, so obviously I wouldn't be able to have them mark in the text itself, just like you wouldn't be able to have them mark in your textbooks. And Belle and I were having a conversation the other day about how the new science books were kind of nice because you actually could do that in there since they're consumables as well. But maybe for Beth, if she just has a particular piece in there that is short but she wants them to get a lot of meaning out of, she might just think about copying that particular page and actually doing a close read of that. To go along with what Elise said, again, you don't have to do all the vocabulary ahead of time. A lot of times what they don't know will come out as they do a close read. And you're going to have your own strategy. With my kids, when they do their close read, the first run through, I have them circle and put a question mark by any word that they can't say, they can't pronounce it, or they think they can pronounce it but they don't really know the meaning, or maybe a couple of question marks if they don't know how to say it and they don't know what it means. And then those are words we go back, and there's a huge chunk of 6th grade ISTEP that covers the standard of using context clues to figure out vocabulary. Every single acuity we take this year has 5 or 6 questions on it that strictly deals with context clues. I haven't looked at the other grade level acuities, but I would assume there's probably a lot in each of them, as well as the content areas. You just might not realize them as such, but they do. So I brought a couple of examples. This is a really strong student example. The article was called The Miracle Flush, and it's about the invention of the toilet and why that was important in human civilization. You could apply that to, obviously, maybe biology if you were talking about bacteria and things like that. You could probably apply it as well to social studies in some way. But the kids really love this article. So this is a really strong student, and you might expect that they would have a lot of marking on there. This is a really weak student. So you can kind of see. And then we did another article that was a current day product being used for human waste disposal in third world countries that they learned about. And then they had to do a comparison and ended up writing about that topic. So that, if you want to see some student examples, this is a whole packet on paired text, which is a good strategy to use if you're looking at a topic in depth. So if I had this article, and I'm going to kind of pretend, as I do with them, that I've never seen it. Now, obviously, they know that I've probably seen and can easily read what they read, but this is how I would go about doing this with them. So I would start right up here at the top, and for them, I just model. I read it out loud, and I tell them, okay, boys and girls, I'm going to read this out loud, and I'm going to tell you everything that's going on inside my head as I read. All right? And they just kind of sit there and stare at me like, okay. And then that's just what I do. And then by the end, we go through the process. I model, they try it. And we're going to do that same process today, but we'll kind of just keep it brief for you, since a lot of you may know how to do this. So I would just start. A template for authentic literacy. I wonder what this word means. Not really too sure about that. Think of literacy as a spine, like a book maybe. It holds everything together. The branches of learning connect to it, meaning that all core content teachers have a responsibility to teach literacy. And all, is that me? And I tell them, don't worry about capitalization, those types of things. You want to just get your ideas down. For all the value in interactive lecture and direct teaching, perhaps the largest proportion of the curriculum should be built around authentic literacy activities in every subject area. So I might even put things like even art and music. So if I'm a teacher, I'm kind of thinking through that. The simple age-old template I'll describe here consists of of following 3 parts, usually but not always in this order. Now, you might notice that I'm reading slowly, and I want to teach the kids to do that because when they're doing a close reading, you don't want them to just blow through the material because they can't really process and take notes if they're not reading slowly, and that's something you really have to emphasize. And I tell my kids, saying the words that are on the page is not reading. And they just kind of look at you like, what? But that's reading. I'm saying the words. That's not reading, though, because you're not interacting, you're not thinking about what you're reading. Until you're thinking about what you're reading, you're not really maybe comprehending it.
I also tell my kids, I make the analogy to math. I say, when Mrs. Gray makes you show your work in math, part of that is so that it, forces you to slow down and think about what you're doing and actually show me what's going on inside your head, because I'm sure that you have students that they can do it inside their head, but you still make them show their work anyway. You'll have strong readers that they can do all of this. It happens so naturally, probably for you if you've made it through college. This is really natural for you. All this stuff just happens inside your head anyway. But for a lot of our kids, it's not natural, and we actually have to teach them how to think while they're reading. And so this helps them to see that they're supposed to do it, and then actually teaches them how to do it.
Right. So, and if you kind of go back to what Eric was saying in the beginning, I think as secondary teachers, and I probably didn't maybe realize that until I came to the middle school and started work, and it was the first time I'd worked with kids above 4th grade. You kind of have this thought process that by the time they get to a certain grade, they can all read. And it's natural to think that, I can put anything in front of them as long as it's, a 7th grade textbook. If a 7th grader is looking at it, they should be able to read it. And that's not true. I mean, you forget that there are a lot of them that are a lot of different levels. And, by doing close reading, like Elise said, you can see what's going on in their head and really get the idea. When I look at the close readings that we did last week, I can see which students, are really struggling with a lot of concepts and a lot of vocabulary. And it's pretty enlightening the first time you do that. So whether you're a science teacher, or a social studies teacher, or an art or music teacher, giving them something to read and really getting inside there and thinking, wow, every time I give the student something to read, how much are they really getting? Are they really able to do that? So a lot of times we say, read chapter 8 and do the questions at the back, and they're clueless. A lot of them are really clueless.
All the research is clear. You think of any kid that is currently struggling in one of your classes, with a few rare exceptions of some specific content. The reason why they are struggling is not because they can't do social studies or can't navigate a computer or can't do science. It's because they have some kind of literacy deficiency. Okay?
So, anyway. And And as I told my students today after we looked at their star reading results for the mid-year, I said, reading is at the heart of everything you do. And it's just something you have to be able to master. So it is important. All right, so then I would go ahead and read on. I think what I'm going to do at this point, though, is I'd like for you guys, if you would, just go right here to where it starts with 4 centuries. All right, I'm not going to go ahead and take up time to get the general concept, but what I would like for you to do is to read this paragraph and annotate that paragraph on your own. So just read it to yourself, make all the marks, circles, anything that comes into your head, any thought that you're thinking, jot those down, and then we're going to talk about those. All right, so go ahead.